As people with different opinions on types of medicine start physically beating each other in the streets and on aeroplanes, we ask, what's driving this tribalism and is anybody benefiting? Hello there, you 4.7 million wonders continuing to awaken in the face of incredible opposition. Here you are welcome, whatever you believe, whatever you think, as long as you come here with an open heart, which some people are clearly lacking in the fuselages above the sky because ex-Baywatch staff are beating up the elderly on the basis of face coverings. We're going to have a look at that because it's sort of ghoulishly humorous, but we're also going to look at an article by Matt Taibbi about who benefits, who profits from this sense of aggression and fear, primal emotions you will note, that often drive action. Who is benefiting from this situation? But before we get into this sort of intellectual substrata, analysis and reasons behind it, let's just have a quick look at this madness.
We're learning more about the woman at the center of that disturbing clash on a plane.
Sometimes it's good to step back for a moment and look at what's happening. We can't be striking the elderly. Whether you think that masks are necessary, whether you think that vaccines are necessary or not necessary, wherever we stand on this complicated and difficult and controversial and unusual issue and set of circumstances around which I have no opinion at all myself, I'm merely a commentator, you have to remember the basic fundamental principles: compassion, kindness, personal autonomy. This is, I suppose, a symptom, an observable sign of a deep underlying problem. Perhaps the whole of this issue could be regarded as revelatory, as having a value to us beyond what we think about particular viruses and particular solutions to that virus.
Patricia Cornwall was arrested for allegedly hitting and spitting on a 69-year-old man.
If you are worried about viruses, don't spit in people's faces. This is applicable in geopolitics. If what you're doing, for example, is protecting democracy, don't bomb someone. If what you care about is people's health, don't hit them around the face and spit at them. It's almost a perfect analogy.
Cornwall now works as a realtor, but she used to be a Raiderette cheerleader. She's also a former actress who appeared on Married with Children and Baywatch under the name Patty Breton.
You won the bikini contest in Palm Springs last year.
Put that bikini on! Put that bikini on!
Sit down, Karen!
Cornwall and the elderly passenger Russell Miller then go at it over masks.
Ah, the Russells. We're out there. Wherever you find conflict, you'll find a Russell shouting, "Sit down, Karen."
Mask up! Mask up!
Cornwall then spit in his face and head area.
That's my head area!
Cornwall was busted by FBI agents when the plane landed in Atlanta.
She's even enjoying it a bit, isn't she? The news report, you can see her eyes are sort of lit up, and I'm not like trying to take her. Oh my God, look at this! Boy, I just did a little bit of wee-wee!
Hey, spit on me! Double going to jail.
Sometimes in the middle of conflict, and over the course of my crazy past I've had them, I've sort of realised, God, what am I doing? How did I get here? I don't care about this incident. So we need sort of, I think, valves and a different type of discourse. Perhaps the media could be accused of amplifying the conflict in this situation, and perhaps the media and particular political movements and particular interests benefit from this environment of conflict. Let's have a little look at that now. Matt Taibbi, writing in Substack, says, Los Angeles Times columnist Michael Hiltzik recently ran a piece entitled, "Mocking Anti-Vaxxers' COVID Deaths is Ghoulish, yes, but may be necessary." The coronavirus pandemic has had a negative impact medically, socially, psychologically, politically, and depending on your particular perspective, you will see those various criteria differently. But what it isn't is like a crisis whereby you're in a house that's burning down and you've got to get the kids out quickly and like so all bets are off, all normal rules are suspended. It's not that. We still need to have some guiding principles. I would call them moral, ethical or spiritual principles that we just don't cross. And I think that that's where a lot of these conflicts, whether they're interpersonal, silly, trivial things that are, you know, distressing to look at if you were that old guy or someone who loved him, but nonetheless we can agree is that that's an interpersonal dispute, or broader online melees or physical conflicts, they're being underwritten by, I would say, ideas that have gotten a little bit out of alignment with truth. The spectacle of posh celebs sneering at hicks who won't take the jab has been compelling theatre for a while now. And it's not entirely unfamiliar, is it? Because if you think of the discourse around Trump and people that support Trump, or the discourse around people that voted for Brexit, you know, there's a sort of, I would say, not unlike the lady delivering the slap in the plane, an appetite to look for situations to legitimately condemn people for being different. Whether it's MSNBC's Joy-Ann Reid suggesting that horse-paste eaters clogging emergency rooms in Oklahoma be stuck at the back of the line, or Goldman analyst turned CNN anchor Erin Burnett joining imperious colleagues Anderson Cooper, Don Lemon and industry mascot Brian Stelter in blasting Joe Rogan for taking a drug intended for livestock, the endless campaign of maladroit scolding almost seems designed to make fence sitters refuse the shot out of spite, confusion, or both. What is this antagonism? What is the function of it? What is the purpose of it? People want to control other people. And it's it's their fault that this happened. It's their fault that this is going on. And really, these are emotions that need to be safely and sensibly processed through community and relationship and friendship, not just erratically sprayed out like mad fireworks made of spit. While the shame campaign has been a catastrophe as a public health strategy, it has been effective as aristocratic misdirection, a way to keep the public's eyes off the vault. Maybe that's what it's for. Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? Because our video's begun with looking at a sort of salacious, titillating and exciting incident of an attractive female smacking an elderly male about the face. It's sort of got all sorts of charges around it. But what is actually happening? What is the deeper reality? Why is that person behaving like that? How did we get here? And is anyone benefiting from it? Sometimes the festival of distraction is so appealing and attractive, we forget to say, what's going on? Amidst this week's hilarity, the Financial Times released a piece entitled Wall Street Bank Set to Report Record Profits for 2021. How can that be happening? Aren't you all around you seeing signs of disarray? Have you been down your high street lately? Aren't shops closing everywhere? How is it that banks, the heart of world finance, are reporting record profits? How? Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs and Bank of America, the FT said, all but Citi are expected to post record profits when the final numbers for 2021 come out. Where are all those earnings going? Banks so far have been using profit to invest in technology, pay bonuses and buy back their own stock. I think I'll invest in pay bonuses for me. Meaning the bulk of this new wealth, mostly fueled by roughly 5 trillion in Fed spending since the beginning of the pandemic, is being converted into compensation for a handful of executives. Where have we seen that before? Where have we seen a situation where there's been a massive collapse across nations and indeed the globe that has been translated into benefits for some of the most powerful interests in the world? Obviously, I'm alluding to 2008, but I bet it's just been happening again and again and again. I bet that it's essentially the wheel of history, just crushing ordinary people and lives in its mighty spokes as it trundles us towards its perfect Armageddon. Buybacks have also been rampant in defence, pharmaceuticals and oil and gas, all of which also just finished their second straight year of record skyrocketing profits. We're now up to about 745 billionaires in the US who've collectively seen their net worth grow about 2.1 trillion to 5 trillion. So it's can't even be specific about it. It's also shady. There's a 2.9 trillion margin of error. Since March 2020, with almost all that wealth increase tied to the Fed's ballooning balance sheet. Why bring this up? Because the goonish intensity of culture war propaganda is clearly increasing as the scale of the national wealth suck widens. God, right? Isn't it important that on this channel we continually say, don't get distracted, don't get drawn into it? I'm sure like when you watch that video, you're either like, well, the guy should wear a mask, you should slap him harder. Or you're like, hey, what's wrong with you, you crazy character? You know, wherever you fall on that scale, let's try to create a better community together. Is this the best we can do as a society that coincidentally benefits the most powerful interests in the world but causes all this dissatisfaction, ugliness and disease? Is this the best we can do? This is beginning to feel like a very fortuitous coincidence for some. Having urban sophisticates bash hicks and hayseeds as the cause of America's problems feels like just the latest incarnation of the age-old game of setting demographics against one another so they don't behead the mansion residents. The only difference is the bulk of the propaganda is now coming from centre-left talking heads instead of the usual right-wing suspects. I couldn't believe it when that happened. I thought that there was something fundamental about the idea that people on the left cared. That what the left sort of is we care about the rights of people. We care about creating a better society. But now it doesn't seem that it was that at all. Wesley Yang put it like this the other day: I don't believe the people who posit a conscious conspiracy of the powerful to destroy any possibility of cross-racial alliance in pursuit of redistributionist aims, but you have to admit it sure looks like one, it's behaving like one, it's functioning like one. And I felt like this for a while, you know, like I used to feel like when there were far-right nationalists in my country and Muslim groups in my country all protesting and getting active, I used to think, you guys have got the same interests ultimately, you're really, really similar. These differences between us, who bloody well cares? Who bloody well cares? And as long as we continue to care, we're going to be meshed in adversity while the powerful are able to continue to pursue their aims without any distraction. Do you know what is painful about this? You can change the world. You can change the world. It's possible. But obviously, first you have to prepare yourself so that you can participate in change, because it will have personal challenges. You know, you have to get to the point where if someone doesn't wear a mask and you'd prefer that they would, that you're able to go, hey, do you mind putting a mask on? If they say no, you sort of have to go, or if you're in a situation where people are really pro being vaccinated and you're not pro being vaccinated, you're able to go, that's cool, I don't mind. That's, you know, you're you've had a different life from me. We're all different. It's all right. Like, we're only here for a little while. 1,000 months, the average lifespan. How are you going to spend your time here? Arguing about some made up stuff? I don't believe in a conscious conspiracy either. Still, without constant drumbeats about the treacherous stupidity of anti-vaxxers and domestic terrorists, at whom would the bulk of Americans' anger be directed now? What a great point from a great journalist. If we didn't continually think it is this group or that group, then wouldn't we start eventually to say, hang on a minute, these people are becoming incredibly rich and powerful. No, wait a second, that poor person is doing something slightly different that's basically none of my business. You can't allow them to dictate where you put your consciousness. Look how many stories and movements at the moment are about the destination of your attention. Whether it's the obvious impact of social media on our lives, the hypnotic potency of those screens, the emergent metaverses, the intention is always to gather your attention and put it in particular places, so it doesn't in the end go, right, we're on a planet, there's a certain number of us, there's a certain amount of resources, the systems that we create should be beneficial to as many people as possible, perhaps accepting that there will be variation across that and potentially hierarchies of values and of success may emerge, but can we do better than this? Can we do better than this? Can we include every voice? Can we respect people's differences? Like, I'm not positing a giddy utopia, but I am advocating for real change. A good guess would be people like the Fed-fattened private equity takeover artists who were just reported to have swallowed $1 trillion in companies last year. These are people who force conquered companies to issue reams of new debt to pay them bonuses, taking advantage of a massive public bond buying program intended as emergency aid. So this is another example of things that are emerging from this pandemic that are meant to help ordinary people, but ultimately help already powerful people, while doing things like cutting shifts for ER doctors and nurses in the middle of a pandemic. Even grandfatherly billionaire Warren Buffett. Oh, I remember when I hit but $1 billion. That was down by the old well shaft. His company, Special Metals, is currently asking 450 striking steel workers to accept pay cuts and take on $725 more a month in health premiums, while Buffett himself just floated on our increasingly phony stock market to increase his personal wealth by $1.6 billion in a single day. Gonna have to ask you guys to pay another $725. Old Grandpappy Buffett, not as rich as he was. Well, you're richer. That's what I meant. Making money is no crime, but in the COVID era, these folks are welfare hogs, not capitalist success stories. Many were staring at ruin 2 years ago, only to see fortunes reversed by the mother of all bailouts. The promise by Fed Chair Jerome Powell that they were not going to run out of ammunition in propping up the financial markets formally made the economy a rigged game. From the moment the CARES Act was signed to now, the markets have been on a steep rocket ride upward, and the calculus has remained simple ever since. If you own financial assets, you get richer, and if you don't, you're probably screwed. What you can see there is a tiered society. There is a sort of a civilization that's untethered from reality, and God, I guess compared to a lot of people, I'm in a version of that. But what we're talking about is a financial market that's not behaving in concordance with the reality of economic decline elsewhere. So when you go and go, bloody hell, what's going on? This used to be like a posh area, all the shops are shut. Meanwhile, Grandpappy Buffett and his pals are recording massive influx of wealth that is directly correlated to that decline. That's where the decline is going. It's not just, oh, it's happening because everyone's got a cough. It's happening because people are nicking the money. This makes it convenient for the likes of Buffett and Blackstone CEO Schwartzman and BlackRock chief Larry Fink that the most despised people in America right now aren't welfare-chugging moguls like themselves, but anti-vax randos wearing Pfizer tells Liza's shirts. It's been miserable watching one old friend and colleague after another defect to a mania that worships the same establishment bureaucracies they once loathed. Many of us were raised in a tradition where question authority wasn't just the bumper sticker you put on the back of your crappy used car, but the central tenet of a belief system. That's what I was not raised on. I discovered it through life. Question authority. Particularly for those of us with an absurdist bent, watching a generation of skeptics turn into religious fanatics whose idea of a heretic is a person insufficiently obedient to the ludicrously shifting diktats of overmatched health bureaucrats. Wow, that's some proper writing there. Decades from now, I still think we'll look back on the way these issues were so successful at keeping people divided while their pockets were picked on a mass scale again as the primary significance of vaccine freakouts. Billionaire Fed skimmers like Fink and Schwartzman should pay people bonuses for making sure blue staters spend more time angsting over horse pace and corruption and for keeping red staters angrier at TV stars than at any of them. It may keep working for a while. Sooner or later though, even Americans might talk, and it'd be a short step from there to disaster. A clarion call for awakening there, for awakening from the dream of conflict, from the significance of the trivial petty disputes that are occupying our time to the reality of where power lies, how power operates, and how power benefits and requires our ongoing conflict. That should be reason enough to stop. Like, even if you feel that visceral rising of, I don't agree, but I dislike, I hate you. You think, hold on a minute. I'm doing exactly what they want. Oh my God, they got me again. They're brilliant. They're so brilliant. You almost have to marvel at it. But more than that, you have to overcome it in yourself.
Eventually, the Delta flight attendants managed to pull her away. She's been told she can't fly except to return home to Los Angeles.
We must learn to turn away from these types of conflicts. We must learn to manage our own emotions and our own tendencies towards tribalism and divisionism, not just with regard to this issue, even though, let's face it, it's the dominant issue of our time, but with regard to all issues that you might see as a potential barrier between you and another human being with whom you have a lot more in common than you have that separates you. In fact and in truth, we are all one living garment of the same conscious entity, and we have to find our way back home to love if we're ever to change the course of this diabolical civilization and its terrifying elite leadership. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Was she right? Was he right? Hit me up. Tag other people in this. Let's pass this content around. Let's create a new conversation around alliances, togetherness, and unity. There's the video I mentioned earlier. It's a cheeky old thing. Elsewhere, you might want to consider signing up to my side channel, Awakening with Russell Brand, and please click here to get my mailing list. I'll tell you about live events, festivals. I'm on tour, for Christ's sake. Come and see me do that. All of that is important, but nothing is more important than that you stay free. Thank you.